Well, number one, I really appreciate that you've opened this link. What's coming up over the next 30 minutes is something we pulled together. It's a 2-day course, many different speakers, many different topics, all about one primary subject. It's how to buy a public auction. It's been a mystery. It's a process in the industry that's not been connected. Traditional real estate's easy. If you're a real estate investor or a real estate professional, you know it's all connected. Buying a public auction has a lot of mystery around it in terms of the data, the bidding, the how to pay for the properties, the risks involved. Well, we've taken all that and put it together in a 2-day course, demystified the process, but we've given you a 30-minute segment here, so enjoy it, sit back, just absorb what it might be for you. This applies to any county across the United States. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to call us because we look forward to working with you soon.
Hi, I'm Sean Brown. That's my husband, Tim. And we just graduated from APA about 3 weeks ago. We were very hesitant about actually attending, but Johnny really pushed and we sat through it, and it was a great class, was very informative from beginning to end. And 3 weeks later, we just won our first home at auction.
And the staff of InfoClosure has been extremely helpful to us through the process, walked us up through all the way, and we're ready to move on our first property and see where it goes from here.
One of the most recent additions to Auction Pro Academy is the segment we did on investors. Couldn't be more excited about it. You know, honestly, I really kind of took it for granted for a few years in my educational delivery, because I've been very mechanical. Oh, you want to buy at auction? It's easy. I've done it for 16 years. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and it all flows into place. But what we really missed, but what we put together in this next segment is how to show up for an investor, how to show up powerfully for a real estate investor who's trying to get a deal. And one of the biggest things that's missed in the industry is how a real estate professional or another investor shows up for the real estate investor who's trying to get deals. So this segment is powerful, it's impactful. If you really want to do business with repeat investors who have more access to money, buying power, you name it, they're the client to have. Really watch this segment and watch it more than once, because there's so much information in there on really how to show up in a powerful way. You don't want to miss it. Okay, let's take a look at what investors are looking for. They're looking for deals. And it comes down to two things. Well, what kind of a deal are you looking for? It's, I'm looking to profit from a flip, okay? And that's what most people are looking for. The distinction from a flip versus a rental is, I'm taking my cash now, right? I buy a property today, I clean it up, I put it on the market, I make a profit, I make a $20,000 profit, that's a flip. I take a portion of that money and put it in my pocket, and I take a portion of that and roll it back into what I'm doing and start building, my reserves up from there. The other one is a cap rate based on a long-term hold. And what you're going to find is investors will talk to you in terms of cap rate. That is, and I'll go into the definition of that more later, but it's the cash-on-cash return that they're getting on that investment. So it is, and that's the way they're looking at it. So we're going to bring that concept a little bit more in depth as we go through, because it's really worth understanding, so you can talk cap rate with somebody going, hey, I'm looking for a fourplex that is at least a 9 cap, right? I'm going to make 9% a year on my money in this investment. And you have a whole bunch of questions to ask from there. We'll go into the detail of the flip and the cap rate in a little bit later. So interviewing investors. What area are you looking for? Do you want to stay just in the Phoenix area? Do you want to go out of state? Do you want to go out of city? What are you looking for? What is your exit strategy? It's a critical question to ask. If you find an investor who doesn't know their exit strategy, or they're leaning on you for an exit strategy, you might reconsider whether or not that's a right fit investor for you. Exit strategy is the number one starting point in this business. If you don't know what you want to do with the next property you buy, you're already at a disadvantage. Like, I know that the next property I want to buy is a flip, because I want what? I want the cash now, right? I want the cash now or within 120 days or less to make that happen. Is our market poised great for fix and flippers? Is the industry poised in a great position for fix and flip people? I'm seeing a few nods. It absolutely is, right? Because it's a buyer's market right now. I mean, the buyers are looking for inventory that just isn't there. So if you have a decent product in a decent location and it's clean and ready to move in, you're going to get offers on that property, and you're going to be able to negotiate right at the top of the market, okay? Which is phenomenal. It's a great time to be in the market doing fix and flip. So what property type? A lot of people go, Rick, I want to do single-family homes as a rental. And that's always interesting to me, and it's not a bad strategy, and I've helped a lot of people with that. But I tell them, I go, well, have you considered fourplexes? Have you considered triplexes, duplexes? Have you considered something even bigger? And sometimes they go, well, no, not really. And I'm saying, well, because your cap rate typically is so much higher on a fourplex, especially at auction, or any of the plexes than a single-family home. And what else do you think benefits you by having a fourplex versus a single-family home? It's the vacancy rate, right? If you have a fourplex and you lose one tenant, how much of your gross rent have you lost? 25%, okay? On a single-family home, if you lose one tenant, how much of your gross rents have you lost? 100%, okay? And, I mean, that's like a no-brainer to me. So now, are there enough fourplexes for people to buy? There's plenty, but at the same time, single-family homes need to be considered in a different way, to really make that a solid investment. If you can drive it into the plexes, I think it's a much better. And your ability to speak to that is really going to serve them in a whole nother way. They're going to be much happier down the road when, their tenants come in and out on a fourplex, but they maintain, 3/4 of the gross revenue for, 60% of the year.
Well, we talked to a lot of people through the course of the Auction Pro Academy, the 2-day event, and find out what do you like and what don't you like and what don't you understand. And overwhelmingly, and kind of a bit of a surprise to me, but overwhelmingly, the conversation is about hard money. How to leverage hard money, how to source hard money, how to bring hard money to your investor clients who are looking to buy at auction. I kind of take it for granted because out of the 16 years I've been buying down a public auction, 15 of those I've been utilizing hard money. But then when I really think back, in the first year I didn't know anything about hard money until I ran into an associate friend of mine who, having left corporate America, he went into hard money, I went into doing fix and flip, and I ran into him down at auction. And since then I had just a connection with somebody in the industry, and from that point on, every year I'd borrowed millions of dollars in hard money to make my deals happen. And knowing how to leverage, knowing when to use it, how to calculate it, the best play, it's incredible stuff. So again, I took it for granted for many years, so really it shouldn't be that big of a surprise that people come through the Auction Pro Academy and really say, you know what, hard money was one of the most impactful sessions that I listened to. Well, here you've got Adam Child, the president of Titan Capital Holdings, who's doing this next segment. Of course, Titan is one of our in-house companies. It's our sister company to InfoClosure.com, and we're so excited to bring it to you because he does a really good job of laying out how to use hard money, when to leverage it, and how to source it. So please enjoy Adam's presentation.
Hard money versus private money. What is hard money? Hard money is an old term, right? Hard money, private money, it's really the same thing. Hard money back in the olden days was if you didn't pay back, something bad might happen to you. That's hard money, but it's really not hard to borrow, correct? It's based on your equity position, your cash in, the quality of the property, your ability to pay, and what your exit strategy is, right? So is it really hard? Has anybody tried to get a conventional loan in the last few years? I'm 24 years in that space. There's a reason I'm here. It's way too cumbersome, even for the best borrowers. So hard money, what is hard money? Hard money is easy money to use as leverage, use it as collateral to pick up investment properties. But if you hear the term hard money, private money, it's the same. We're made up of private investors that put funds into our company that allow us to go ahead and make the loans that we make. How to borrow hard money, and I'll have different slides in here. It's really simple. We do require an application. You can go to the website, you or your clients, TitanCapitalHoldings.com. Some of that information should be in your booklet. Go to the website, download a standard 1003 Uniform Residential Loan application, print it out, get the basic information on the borrower. That's where it starts. We have an awful lot of borrowers who are coming to us and they're saying, hey, we're getting started, we're working with Johnny, we're working with Rick, we're looking at properties at auction, we're looking at other places too. How do we get set up with you guys? That's excellent. Get an application for you or your client, get it filled out, get it sent in to us, we start a file, it just makes it that much easier. What happens when you have one of those deals that you want to close in 3 to 5 days? You know, if you can get us prepared in advance, it puts us in a better position to respond quickly to you, okay? So it does require an application, find a property, right? Verify available funds. Now, I think all of us as hard money lenders, we go through this. You know, we'll have a big demand on our funds and we'll be fully deployed. It's not a bad problem to have unless you're looking for $100 grand. So I always maintain whenever you're getting ready to run at a property, check with us. We haven't said no in over 2 years because we've got a lot of resources, but check with us, make sure we have available funds. Don't take it, don't assume or take it for granted. Check with us, make sure we have available funds. Make sure we're ready for you when you pull the trigger. Inspect the property. I assume you would have already done that. We do it as well. Are you getting yourself into a good quality piece of collateral, or is it an $11,000 piece of collateral but has a lot of potential? We look at that all the same, okay? And you might have questions about that as we go through it, so please ask. And close the loan. It's pretty simple, not like a conventional. Qualifying for hard money, what do we look for? We look for the collateral. So you're going to make a call to me and it's going to go something like this. Hey Adam, we're talking to Johnny, we got a property coming up on Thursday. Here's the address, here's what the opening bid is, but here's what my max bid is, okay? How much can you lend me on that, right? So we do look for skin in the game. We will try to start with as little as 20% down. It just depends. You know, if you're finding a property that's really been run down, is going to require a lot of work, we might look for a little bit more money down, or we might take less money down and hold some of your dollars in escrow to ensure the rehab gets done properly and things like that. We'll work directly with you on that. But it starts with the collateral, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, if something were to happen to you or your investor and we're left holding the bag, we do have to look at it and say, is this something that we can get ourselves through? What's the equity position? Are we protected? Okay, hard money lenders do not use PMI, so we're self-insured. So we just have to make sure that the equity's good, the collateral's good. Make sense? And what's your exit? Our typical loans are 6, 12, and 24 month. I'll show you here as we go further on. We've got the 6-month fix and flip. We've got what I call the 12-month equity builder and the 24-month transitional. I'll explain those more in detail. We do some longer term loans. We have some clients that were just out of a bankruptcy, the result of the economic correction that we just went through, had their property free and clear, wanted to take some cash out and go do some other investments, and we did a 15-year fixed owner-occupied primary residence loan, 10% principal and interest. They'll probably pay it off in a couple years. So we have those options as well, just things to keep in mind.
I've been in the space of buying a public auction for 16 years, and I can't tell you how many real estate agents I talk to, real estate professionals who go, well, what do you do? And I say that, I buy a public auction. I bought, 3,000 plus properties. And of course, one of their first comments is, oh, I don't do that because I can't make a commission. And I feel bad every time I hear that because they just don't get how to do it. It's very easy to do and very simple and straightforward. Mike McCall, our designated broker for Look Inside Realty, does this next segment, and he does a great job of just explaining how you need to approach this process to ensure that you get to pay the commissions that you're due. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Mike's presentation, but know without a doubt that there's a way to get a commission on the front end of buying a public auction. You're bringing your investor into that space. He lays it out. It's very simple and straightforward. Please enjoy Mike's presentation.
But what I'm here to do is to bust another myth which we hear from realtors constantly, and that is, well, I'm not going to come into this space because, how do I can't make any money because nobody pays a commission, right? Has anybody ever felt that? Have you ever heard that? Have you ever thought that? At some point, right? Okay, well, it's not true. Now, as Rick said, however, the way that you get paid a commission at trustee sale is completely different, right? How do you normally get paid in a traditional real estate transaction? Who normally pays? The seller. There is an argument that it's the buyer, but you get the idea, right? And it comes out of title company, it comes to your broker. Does that happen in a trustee sale transaction? Absolutely not. It is very much a non-traditional way of getting paid. But now to get to that answer, I want to ask you a question which will allude to something which has been said many, many times here in this day and a half. Let me ask you this direct question. What is your relationship with your client, buyer or seller? What is your relationship? And this is not an agency question. What is your relationship? Yeah, I can't see your name, but way in the back. Provide service. Beautiful. We're heading in the right direction. Anybody else? Knowledge. It's a business relationship. We're getting closer. Fiduciary. It's a P word I'm looking for. Professional. Beautiful. Come on, one more. Profit. Okay, we're even getting closer. How do you create profit with two people? One serving the other. Partnership. Okay? And that's going to be kind of a theme as the rest of the day goes on, is a partnership. You are developing a partnership with your client. And the whole trustee game, the trustee sale game, is just another game piece in that whole thing. So, let's get right to it. What do you do if you have a buyer? Forget trustee sale for a second. What do you do if you have a buyer, a seller who doesn't want to pay commission? A seller that doesn't want to pay a commission, as in, for example, a for sale by owner, a FSBO. Lori? Aha, that buyer-broker thing, right? Anybody else, have you ever run into that situation where you have got a buyer that really is interested in that house over there, it's not listed, but we know it's a for sale by owner, or you approach the owner and say, would you be interested in selling? Absolutely, yes, I would, but Mr. Seller, would you pay a commission? Absolutely not. So your only recourse, unless you want to work for free, right, is to approach your buyer and say, listen, this is a perfect house for you. Yes, I agree. It fits all your criteria, et cetera, but you need to pay me. And how do we secure that? Again, it's not, totally airtight, but how do we secure it? With a buyer-broker agreement, right? What am I holding in my hand? Right here, a buyer-broker agreement, right? Now, does the Department of Real Estate or the Arizona legislature or any other entity dictate how much you get paid? No, of course not, right? That's all negotiable. We have certain standards, et cetera, but those are not legal. It's whatever you negotiate. So in this case, let's say you're the investor. Would you pay a fee to someone or some company that presents you with a magnificent deal? The deal of the century. This is absolutely perfect for me in whatever way it's perfect for you, either as an investor or, if you're a realtor, your client, the investor. Would you pay a fee for that? Probably. So what you do, and investors out there who are listening, I see nobody got up and left, so you're all listening, and you need to know this because, again, a partnership, do we hide things from our partners? Absolutely not, right? And you want your agents to get paid too.
One of the number one things that keeps people out of buying a public auction is the assurance, if you will, on what you're buying at auction and what the lien position is. In this next segment, Dan Barbercroft with Sterling Title gives us an overview of the role of title, the role of their opinion of what's coming up for auction, and how we rely on that. And, so many people say, if everybody's bidding at auction, just buy it. Well, that's insanity. You must work with the title company. You must work with that professional who's backing the play for what you're bidding on at auction. We don't do anything without an opinion from a title company like Dan's to ensure that we know what we're buying, how we're buying, and the position we're going to be in after we've made the purchase. So take advantage of this segment. Understand what it is so you have an understanding of the process, but know whenever you work through us at Infoclosure.com, we've got the opinion of a trusted professional. Enjoy Dan's segment.
And to give you just a little background about title is, my first impression is oftentimes what your clients are. When I bought my first home, I thought, this is a ripoff. I said, this is insurance. What do I need this for? Someone explained to me what title insurance is. They said, well, it's insurance backwards on your home. This is a great policy. And I said, I don't care. But what I want to talk to you about is why title insurance came into place first of all. and what the history of title insurance is. Okay? In Pennsylvania in the 1800s, there was a lawsuit about a conveyance of a home, and it had to do with the seller and an undisclosed lien. And when the buyer bought the home, it closed and everything else, and they went to sue the seller. And the seller said, I relied on my attorney. My attorney told me that I didn't have to worry about this lien. So what did the court do? They said, well, if you relied on your attorney, you must have been right. And the buyer was stuck with the lien. And people said, well, this isn't right. Okay, why is it if someone gets an attorney opinion, I can't sue their attorney? He wasn't my attorney. I have no standing. So what can I do? And Pennsylvania said, okay, we'll start this thing called title insurance. And sure enough, the first title insurance company, the first policy for $1,500 was for the mother or the owner of the company. And that's what started our system of title insurance. And people think of it, well, it's just insurance. But it's a little bit more than that. And that's what people don't think about. What are some things that we insure against? Okay? First of all, we insure against fraud. We insure against bad conveyances, mental incompetence. We insure against improper transfers. We insure against zoning ordinances, violations, other things that come into contact with your property. Why is that really important, though? I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. About 3 months ago, there was a lawsuit that took place over eBay. And this guy said, that's my car. It was stolen from me in 1965. That's my car. Now, this car has changed hands 4 or 5 times at this point. Okay? What happened? He got his car back. Because it's special. It's specific. Okay? And they look at this as a car or an automobile as something that could not be replaced. This 1965 car was deemed, there was no amount of money that could be given to him that would take the place of this car. Well, why am I telling you this? Because homes are the same way. I could come out of the woodwork 50 years later and say, that was my grandmother's house. She was incompetent at the time that she signed that deed, and I would like that back now. If you have title insurance, you're okay. If you don't, you got to give the home back. Now, yes, you could go back and sue the person who sold the home to you and hope that they have the money to pay you back. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But that's it. That's what you're left with.
This is Lisa Patton. I enjoyed the class. I'm trying to do a spin to it. I think I'm going to try to do it to wholesale some properties because now I can get into properties cheaper with a more of a cash point. I can get more cash out of it. And a lot of people are looking for properties that I know. And as you know, I'm a member of ESRIA, so that's why I did it too, so I can sell properties to them. And it was a great class because I like his MAP program because that's really why I came back, because he put down step-by-step what you need to do to get into a house with all the price points so you know how much profit you're going to make at the end. And that's the biggest seller. I couldn't find no one else who has a better system than the MAP program than him. The best I've seen it yet.
Well, we've been talking about it for a long time, that we're going to put a professional in front of you about evictions and how to position for having evictions done and kind of demystifying the process of who can be evicted, how they can be evicted when you're buying a public auction. Up next is Mark Zinman of Williams, Zinman and Prout. And these guys are incredible. Over 100,000 evictions that they've done. If you want to understand the process and kind of demystify that specifically for you, I've done a bunch of evictions on my own, and when I have to take the step and use an attorney for forcible detainer, Zinman is the group that I use. And these guys are pros. The knowledge is incredible. So enjoy this segment and just know that whether you're doing an eviction on your own or whether you're working through an attorney to do the forcible detainer action, these guys are the way to go. But very, very important information. So take a listen and enjoy.
Once you get your deed, or even before that, actually, let's say you go to the sale, you bid at the property, you're the successful bidder. You're going to go out the next day, obviously, and pay the balance of owed 5 p.m. Let's say you go to the property and there's somebody in there. Assuming it's, first off, the trustor, the former owner of the property. One, be as nice as you can. That's my suggestion. But it's not the end of the world if somebody's in there. Like I said, Arizona, what they are known, the statutes regarding forcible detainers, which are called evictions, are actually pretty favorable to the owner of the property. If you have a former owner in the property, the law basically just says you can give a demand for possession, And if they fail to vacate, you can then file that forcible detainer to have them removed. Which means when you go out to the property, I suggest immediately, the day after you win, have in foreclosure or you do it yourself, go out to the property, serve a demand for possession. Talk to the people. If they're reasonable, great. See if you guys can work something out for them just to vacate the property willingly. But I will tell you, even if you're working with somebody trying to do a cash for keys deal or just simply giving them a week to vacate, always follow the process through the eviction. What you don't want is to be believing what somebody's telling you and wait a week, nothing happened. Wait another week and nothing happened. What you can do is serve the demand. And if they don't vacate, file the eviction. And obviously that's where we come in. We handle the eviction process all the way through. We can even serve the demand for you if you want. It kind of depends on, how comfortable you are going out there. If you're not comfortable, if you want that space between you and the occupant, we'll handle that process. We serve the demand, and then we get the ball rolling as well in terms of the eviction. Like I said, you serve the eviction, the demand notice. If they don't vacate, 5 days later, if you want, you can then file the eviction. There's kind of a dispute as to which courts you proceed in, but basically, for us, we file the case in justice court, and we're in court after that within 1 week for an initial hearing. That's incredible in terms of if you have hard money on your property, on the investment, while you're waiting, obviously, only waiting a week as opposed to other states. Some states it can take 3 months, 6 months to do an eviction. Arizona, you can be in and out of the process in 3.5 weeks. That is very favorable to an owner or a landlord, obviously with somebody in their property. But to get the benefit of that 3.5 weeks, you have to make sure you're doing everything what you're supposed to be doing, obviously, which is serve the notice, start the process. Maybe I'm an attorney, maybe I'm calloused. Just because somebody tells you they're going to move out does not mean they're going to move out, right? A lot of people think they can file a lawsuit to stop you from doing an eviction. You really can't. In Arizona, there's not a lot of ways to stop the eviction from going forward from somebody that just bought a property at a trustee sale. You serve the demand, we can do by hand delivery or certified mail. You file the eviction 5 days later, and then you're in court 7 days later. And in a post-trustee sale case, there's actually very limited defenses. The fact, for example, that somebody may believe that the property was wrongfully sold can't come up in the eviction process. They may have a separate claim against the trustee for wrongfully selling it, against the bank for foreclosing when they shouldn't have. All of that, though, as I explained, doesn't affect your rights as the investor. You can go in, file the eviction, and get the person out, and then you can move on with your property. And if we're talking a 3.5 week process to go through that whole thing, that's not bad at all. Now, what I've found, a lot of times, like I said, we have a gambit of clients. And what I found is a lot of people are inherently afraid of properties that are occupied. They're afraid that people are going to cause damage or that it's going to be too hard to get them out. And I think the market kind of builds in a price for that. Is people just assume, oh, it's too bad, we're not going to bid on those. And so there's a lot of benefit on looking at properties that are occupied. Because one, if somebody's in there a lot of the times, it's being maintained up till that point. It's not vacant, you don't have trespassers in there. So the home's actually functional, right? The water's on, the electric on, somebody's living there maintaining the property. There's a risk, obviously, of concern of whether they want to damage the property, but realistically, that's not the bulk of people. You may have that one bad seed, but the majority of people are living there, and they'll take their time to get out. So all you have to do, the PowerPoint's a little, obviously, on top of each other, but you have to serve the demand, there's a copy of it there, and then file the eviction. And what happens? You're in court 7 days later, you get a judgment. After judgment, the tenant has 5 more days to vacate. And if they failed to vacate, you filed what's called a writ of restitution. Constable comes out and physically removes them from the property. Like I said, pretty fast process. Now, on the flip side of that is, what happens if there's a bona fide tenant in the property? Let's say you go out to the property and the person says, hey, I have a lease. I leased the property from the former owner. You can't evict me. Well, under Arizona law, a tenant with a former owner wouldn't have any more rights than the former owner. But under federal law, in 2009, President Obama signed into law what's called the Protecting Tenants and Foreclosure Act, which was intended so that tenants can't get uprooted right after an eviction, right after a foreclosure. So that trumped Arizona law, and that's what we follow now. So if you buy a property and there's a tenant in there, they can stay in the property if they're a bona fide tenant. A bona fide tenant is somebody there's actually a legal definition. It's somebody that is paying fair market value, not substantially below it, they're not related to the former owner, and it's an arm's length transaction. And so if the tenant can prove those things, potentially they get to stay in the property through the remainder of their lease, or if you're actually going to move into the property, you can give them a 90-day notice to vacate the unit.
When I make a successful buy down a public auction, the very first call I make when I'm walking off the courthouse steps is to my insurance company. Rick Casita is the next presenter. He's been doing insurance for me from day one on all my buys down at public auction. He understands it. He knows the risks involved, the right policy to put in place, and literally is the first call that I make. I do my successful bid, I pay my money, and as I'm walking away, I'm calling Rick to make sure I have insurance on that property immediately. You have to protect that asset. It's critical. So Rick is going to fill you in on all the details and the understanding you should have about what insurance you need to have in play, because not all insurance works. It's the right policy for the right project at the right time to make sure everything is safe and your assets protected. Enjoy Rick's presentation.
Imagine buying a property, and in the property there's a house, there's a wall with a fireplace. You're going to knock down everything except that one wall that holds the fireplace, and you're going to rebuild the whole property. That's really a builder's risk policy. So people get confused sometimes. They say, call me up, and they say, I need a builder's risk policy because I got to go in and I got to do $5,000 worth of sanitation on this house. I want to turn around and resell it. No, you don't need a builder's risk policy. You need a vacant property policy, which has an element of builder's risk built right into it. And that's for everything shy of knocking down the whole house except one wall. That's for going in and doing a lot of the cosmetic things, maybe reworking the air conditioning system or the electrical system, switching out a fuse box panel for a breaker box, for example. Those kinds of things would all be covered under that vacant property policy. I should mention that there's short-term, 3-month, or 6-month. There's a strategy behind that, and I kind of moved all of my clients away from getting those short-term 3-month policies simply because that's the insurance company's minimum period of time. There's no refund if you only use a month and a half of that policy. Too often times what was happening is somebody get a 3-month policy, they were just entered into escrow on their house, but they're at their tail end of that policy, and they call me up and say, I got to get another 3-month policy because I need 3 more weeks worth of insurance. And I hated seeing that they were throwing away 2 months worth of the cost of insurance, and they were just not going to use, and it wasn't going to get refunded back to them. So the better strategy there was I started convincing people, it's a little bit more money out of pocket up front, but get the 6-month policy, because everything beyond the first 90 days that you don't use is fully refundable back to you off of that policy, which really solved all the problems. And in fact, now, honestly, I can't remember the last time I wrote a 3-month. It's been that long, because everybody buys those 6-month policies now. Something that I used to see happen, I haven't seen it quite as often today, but people would buy properties for fix and flips, turn around and fix them up, like them so well they decided to keep them and then just go ahead and rent them out. And so if that ever were the case, you'd want to make sure that you converted that fix and flip or that vacant property policy over to a rent landlord policy, because if there's a claim and you have it set up on the wrong policy, you could have a problem. And speaking of that, and I was going to do this a little later, but I think I'll just move into it right now. A lot of people don't realize on a landlord policy that if that property is vacant more than 30 days and then you have a claim, check your policy. You could have a problem getting that claim paid for. If the house burns down, you could have a serious problem. There's a clause in the insurance policy that says if a landlord policy is vacant longer than 30 days and if you can't show proof that it was occupied within that last 30-day period, the insurance company doesn't have to pay that claim. So it's really worth you knowing and being able to take a look at, because oftentimes I find somebody call me and say, yeah, I haven't had anybody in it for 90 days. We've been trying to clean it up and get it fixed up so that we can get it rented out again. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. That could really be... Yeah.
Distinction based on exit strategy. So if I'm a fix and flip guy, what you're suggesting, even though the market's hot right now and I should be able to turn a property in 90 days or less, you're telling me to buy what duration?
6 months.
6 months. And the reason is because if I buy only a 3-month,
You got
there's
2
zero
3-month.
refund
That's
on
right.
a 3-month.
And you'd have to do another one back to back because you got it sold within the 90 days, but the closing is going to carry you past the 90 days. And you don't want to be with 3 weeks without insurance coverage
Right.
while you're trying to to close the deal on the house.
Okay. Does everybody follow that on a fix and flip? Now, if there, and again, part of this is you're going to have to advise your client in some cases or tell them, hey, listen, I'm not sure about the insurance, call Rick Casita. So here's another example. I'm going to buy a 4-plex and it's really in tough shape, okay? But I think, right, the investor thinks I can get this done in 30 days. But not everything goes that way,
Nope.
right? You can't get your subcontractors in. So the best thing to do is take a builder's risk vacant policy on it first. You're going to keep it long term, right? You're going to keep this 4-plex long term. It's an annuity for life. But initially, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is, just in the event I go over 30 days, I better put a builder's risk / vacant home policy on it for 6 months.
Right.
And then when I start taking tenants, convert it to a landlord policy.
To a landlord policy, exactly. And that's a great thing to point out, too. You only have to have 50% rented out for it to be able to make that switch.
Perfect.
So it's no longer considered a vacant property. But the reason why we're spending some time on this, perhaps, is that you need to know that what you pay for an annual policy on your homeowner's policy, that'll buy you about 6 months' worth of a vacant property policy. The price is double what it normally would be on either a landlord policy or on your own home. And the reason for that is, if you go to one, if somebody here's got to be insured by State Farm or Farmers or Allstate or American Family, and tell them you've got a vacant property, and take the phone away from your ear because they're going to drop it on their end. They don't want anything to do with a vacant property. They do not want to insure it. They don't want to come close to it. So because there are so few companies out there that really will take on that risk, what do? They know they're the only game in town. They're going to charge a premium dollar for taking on that risk for you.
My friend and attorney Mark Windsor in this next segment is going to kind of give an overview of having the right legal structure when entering the space and working with investors entering the space of buying a public auction. And again, it's just in real estate investing in general. It's not necessarily specific to public auction, but we asked Mark to come in when we did our very first Auction Pro Academy, and he was very gracious about it and shared the hour with us in terms of how to set up your business and what to look for in joint ventures and those types of things. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Mark's. It's got a little bit of a legal twist, but the thing you need to know coming out of it is there are things and legal structures you need to be considering when walking in and really stepping into the space of real estate and investing in general. So enjoy Mark's presentation. He does a great job. He's got a great way of presenting, which I always enjoy. But the most important thing to keep in mind is make sure you get an attorney involved, just from a consultative standpoint, to make sure your legal structure is in place so you can play hard and fast when it comes to it. Enjoy Mark's presentation.
Verbal agreements in real estate, all of you know, is just not good. Even if it's a side business agreement that legally is effective because it's not related directly to the transaction, not good, not good. Those days of the handshake agreement are long past, unfortunately. They're just long past. Now, Rick and I go way back, and as I visit with you, again with the thought that we're just in a little consultation, you can ask questions. It is not my intent ever to kill a deal as we talk about structures. In fact, many times when we're dealing with auction property, decisions have to be made quickly. And though it is my job to point out potential liabilities, it's also to understand that opportunities many times are greater than potential liabilities. And we understand that as business people. Attorneys don't always understand that, but business people understand that you've got to sometime pocket some of the liability and know you're going to carry it around while understanding that the opportunity is great enough that it's worth having that in your pocket, okay? Of all the forms to take real estate, one of the worst kind, though, is in your own name. Yet that's the most prevalent. Some of the pros and cons of it, certainly the pros, you don't need anybody to agree with you. as you make decisions. And you've got to move fast in an auction. So that is certainly one of the pro. You don't have to split the profits. There's no partners to fight with. I tell you, there was a time I had to split up with a partnership, and I swore I'd never have another one. But unfortunately, that didn't last very long, because in order to get things done, many times you have to have other people around you. And you just get, hey, you get different kinds of advice when somebody has skin in the game. Isn't that right? Then if somebody's just an advisor, like, you come hire me, it is different than if Rick and I sit down and I say, I'm putting in 100,000, you're putting in 100,000, let's make some decisions. It is a little different, isn't it? So that's one of the disadvantages of doing it as an individual. The higher liability, clearly, no one advising you who's got skin in the game, and you have limited funds. The next way that I advise people to hold property is a trust. Now, let me make it very clear. A living trust has zero, and I repeat, zero liability protection. You understand that? Had somebody just the other day send me an email, I've got this problem coming up, and you told me my trust would protect. No, I have been teaching this stuff for years. I have never told anybody that a living trust protects you at all from liability. The reason you may want to consider that when buying, or right after buying and transferring, is all the other protections it gives for estate planning. Other than that, it's exactly like owning it by yourself. The next one is a solely owned corporation. In the state of Arizona, owning a corporation for real estate is just barely this side of stupid. All right? It just is. There are times you can't get around it because you'll have a client who has a corporation doing other things, and that corporation is going to buy real estate incident to their other business. But if somebody comes to you and says, my accountant told me that I should have this corporation because I get this little teeny tax benefit, and I'm going to use it primarily to buy real, that is just dumb. You know, have the accountant call me, and I will, in a very polite, I won't call him dumb. I might infer it. No, I won't. But it's just dumb. It's burdensome. It's expensive. You got to do the reports every year. And by the way, the liability protection for a solely owned corporation, understand when we talk liability, did you know liability flows two ways? Most people only think one way. It flows two ways when we're talking about any business venture. If we're talking about joint ventures, corporations, LLCs, there's a two-way street on this. One is, what if a liability originates in the entity or the joint venture? Will that liability that originates there come up and take my personal stuff, right? That's one way. The other way is, what if I have a liability that pops up in my personal life? Will that reach down and take that asset from me or from my partners, right? If you're in with somebody else, if they have a liability, will it reach down and take my share of that, right? Two-way street, sometimes with multiple lanes. A corporation has absolutely zero protection if a liability originates with you and is flowing to try to take your shares away, called stock, in that corporation. A solely owned corporation has very, very little, in my opinion, for most people, protection coming from a liability originating in the corporation and flowing up, very little. A little is true. But if we're going to talk about some of the pros, it does have a perception of liability protection. Therefore, there is, ergo, some liability protection, right? Because there's the perception there. I have literally been in litigation battles where the other side did not understand liability protection and piercing the corporate veil the way I did, and I was able to pull some things off just because of their lack of understanding, because the perception was there. Fine. But all I'm telling you is, if I'm representing the creditor and I'm trying to pierce through some corporate veils and it's solely owned by the way most people run them, I'm piercing. I'm piercing through that.
Hi, it's Rick again. Listen, I appreciate that you spent 30 minutes with us, kind of got a glimpse through our buffet of information that we presented to you. I hope you can see how outstanding the information is based on the variety of speakers who are there. No matter where you are in the country, this is valuable information. This is taking you to a place that most people aren't willing to go. Public auction, access to inventory not found on traditional MLS multiple listing service, fastest purchase in the market, fastest acquisition time, and thirdly, the lowest price point in the market. No matter what you hear, being at public auction and serving clients in a whole new way is very valuable. Click the link below. Don't miss the opportunity to take advantage of an event that was $3,000 for all of the attendees. You can get it now for 99 bucks. You can pull components of information out of there, use it in your current career, your current business model, and leverage that to earn commissions. But even more than that, serve clients in a way that you have not served them before. Public auction is the way to go. Take a look at the information, but click the link below because this is a limited time offer. Again, take advantage of it. It's here for you right now.
Verbal agreements in real estate, all of